My guest for this episode is an illustrator that uses her skill to tell baseball stories. She has unintentionally championed the women of this sport. She's a San Francisco Giant. Yeah, I know she's in for a tough season this year. Instead of keeping the score of the game, she sketches the game. Her work is everywhere. She has been commissioned by the National Pastime Museum, Worcester Art Museum, ABC News, 538, Merrill Lynch, American Express, the International Women's Baseball Center, All-American Girl Professional Baseball League Player Association, Major League Baseball Organization, International Sports Publication. If you've not seen her work, you must be living under a rock, a giant rock, probably a boulder. Ladies and gentlemen, illustrator Bertie Cantu, the incredible women of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, Annie O'Rourke. Annie, how are you doing today? Happy Saturday.
Thank you. Happy Saturday to you too.
That is a lot. You've done a lot.
That is a lot. That just makes me tired hearing you talk about it.
And you still got more to do. It's amazing.
So much more to do. The to-do list never ends, but you know, that's what keeps me going. Otherwise, what else are we going to do right now?
Especially now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So again, thank you for coming on the show. Kind of New to Baseball is its main mission is to grow the game by introducing young fans of baseball topics of the sport in a very easily digestible way. And the subject for today is the inclusion of race and gender in baseball. So obviously you have extensive research on a particular topic of baseball when it comes to women. And, you know, you took 3 years to research this subject. And, you know, to me, that stood out because I'm assuming it took 3 years to research because the information wasn't easily available for you. You had to find it in so many different other, unconventional ways. Was that one of the main reasons?
Yes and no. Well, it's kind of a twofold thing. When I decided that I when it just kind of occurred to me, like, wait a minute, I'm a woman and there are not many women in my own work because I'm doing a lot of work in baseball. I had a lot of sketches and drawings of women fans, which is awesome. And there are a lot of women fans. And I think that's something that a lot of people, it's very secondary when considering things like marketing and publicity and merchandise and all of that. And that's great. My grandmother was a huge baseball fan, or is. And I myself am just a fan. I didn't really ever play to any extent, but, it just kind of occurred to me how very starkly limited that was and how apparent that was. And not just on the field, but like through what I do, I had access to areas of the field that a lot of fans don't have access to. And even behind those corridors, just, noticing the difference. And so when I decided to start looking into those stories, there are some very accessible places to find, particularly stories about the All-American Girls Baseball League, now known as the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. But I think a lot of people look to the movie first, which is admittedly exactly what I did, just to kind of remind myself of what it was about and reference that. And then, started digging in and found some great stories that are what inspired me to want to research. But thankfully, there are women who did some amazing research shortly after Title IX passed in the 70s that they are really responsible for bringing the knowledge of this particular league, to making it available. But women in baseball in general, that information is sorely missing. And also when I did start digging for that information is when I really found the good stuff. And I found stuff that I didn't know, that most people don't know, stories that most people hadn't heard. So the movie is instrumental and wonderful in getting this particular chapter out there. But in some ways, because it's so popular, it's also so limiting because, people think, oh, well, I watched the movie, I know everything there is to know about it. And it's not the case.
I was one of those people. I assumed that was it. I fell in love with that story and saw that, and that was an amazing inspirational movie. But actually reading your book, it kind of like puts this other layer of, you compare what baseball players nowadays have to deal with, and the struggles going from minor leagues to major leagues. There's so much difficulty in that. But reading this story and the difficulties they had to go through, not only just playing the game of baseball with the different rules coming up every year for them, but also just the outside rules of etiquette and, just being a woman in that time. That in itself, I have no idea how they were able to perform in such a high level and be praised for their high levels at certain points. And that just tells you how much talent there is out there that we're not even trying to like include in baseball. It's just a shame that, to me, it's like a sad but yet inspiring story. Every time I turned a page, I was like, why don't we have this now?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's equal parts inspiring and upsetting. And I think that's the case with so many stories that we are finally getting to hear and read and learn about right now. Whether they're about, like the Negro Leagues players, or I just finished a biography on Toni Stone, and talk about like women who just, I mean, I knew some about her and was already like, this woman's my hero. But now that digging in more, it's like, oh my God. And it's a lot for now, but imagining the things that were taking place for these women, for women like Toni Stone and women in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, and just women wanting to be involved in sports at all, in like the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even earlier, it's just like, it's pretty incredible. And I do think that, while it's awesome that venues for information are now like willing to take this on, like for example, the National Baseball Hall of Fame, they have information on these women now and stuff, which is great, but it's still so limited. Like the Dolly Vardens, for example, like all Black women's baseball teams back in, it's like we know they exist, but the repositories that keep this information and make it accessible to people are like just now realizing that the history is not complete without them. And so, the more that we can mine and then make available, I think the more possibility we can propel moving forward. Like when you see that it's happened, that's so inspiring. Like, oh, there were women that did this. I could do this, that's very important.
Yeah. Like, the reason why I got into baseball is because of other people of color in baseball, Ichiro Suzuki, not Jose, Pedro Gomez, like all these people that are out there, and they were huge inspirations to me. I just imagine if this story was accessible to young women out there right now, like I can be in this sport too. Like, this is my sport too. And, I would love to see a day, I keep saying this, I would love to see this happen. Women playing professional baseball now, like there should be a women's baseball league. And it's crazy that we're saying how ridiculous that sounds, but it was there it like back then, and it's not now where, we're talking about inclusion and equality and diversity, but yet we can't have a league. They have to like be marginalized to just softball, which is not fair. Like I don't understand why the disconnect is not there. I mean, I do know, but
Yeah. I think we can follow kind of the same, similar pathways from certain eras to now and see what went wrong and why, and how we've sort of like arrested development, or lately it feels like we're just like devolving, but it is that it's funny because my whole understanding and venture into women participating in baseball now came about because of this research. So it wasn't like I started out being an advocate for or feeling strongly about women's place in baseball now and then thought, I'm going to go back in time and learn where this started. I actually started in going back in time. And it wasn't until, like I had this realization of, in this very bizarre moment where I was really lucky that the Women's World Cup of baseball was happening. And by the way, if nobody knows about it, follow the USA national team, the women's baseball team. They're badass. And what they have to work with is like I don't know if anyone saw the most recent photo tweeted by, I believe, Stanford, like the women's team, like their workout equipment. It was like 5 yoga mats and a rack of dumbbells. And then they showed the men's gym, and it was like a world-class gym.
Yeah, I saw a few. Yeah. I saw a few women reporters just like show a picture of a rack of like small little dumbbells. Like, what is this?
Yeah. That's what they have going into the Sweet 16, which is, I mean, thank heavens for things like social media where we can see these things immediately now and just be like, what the hell? But that Team USA, you know, they have to like pay their own way to train together, and you know, it's kind of crazy, but they are amazing. And I love the baseball that is played, you know, with women's teams right now, because it's like real strategic, pure. Like, I think for someone, and I'm getting like slightly off track here, but I think for someone who is interested in the sport of baseball, but feels a little bit either intimidated or disenchanted by Major League Baseball and all the money and the different things that are going into it, I would highly recommend starting with like a Team USA women's national team game, or even like watching a Korean women's baseball game, or a collegiate baseball game. Cause that's when you're really seeing, like, I think it's great for like baseball purists to watch stuff like that. It's not just like a bunch of, grand slam. It's not just home run after home run. It's not like pitching matchup after pitching matchup after pitching matchup. You know, it's like real, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of how baseball really started, and it's really, really fun to watch. So anyway, there's my little side note about that. But an interview, the Women's World Cup was happening when I was writing this book. And there was an interview with a woman who actually wrote the latest board book that I illustrated, Birdie Cantu. She plays on Team USA. And I was reading an interview with her, and she was talking about how she's constantly faced with this conversation where I don't even know if it's a conversation, but people telling her she plays softball. Like, not just like, oh, hey, what sport do you play? I play baseball. Oh, cool. You play baseball? It's like they feel the need to correct her. Like, no, oh, you mean you play softball? No, I play baseball. But you mean softball. And it's this back and forth. And she's like, as if I don't know what sport I play. And in that moment, reading that, I was just struck with like how weird it was that there's an interview from a woman who played in the All-American Girls League in the 1940s. And it was like verbatim. She had the same conversations with people. And I was like, hold on, this conversation happened 70 years ago. And this conversation happened right now. And that was when I made the connection of like, yeah, why hasn't this existed? Like, I was thinking of it as like, isn't this cool? This kind of like cool moment in time in this relic. And then it was like, wait, why is it a relic? Why isn't it a thing that kept going?
Yes.
And so that's kind of, then I really felt like, okay, I want to know more about this. And the afterword for the book came, and I got to interview all these really incredible women who are responsible for all kinds of firsts, and really just kind of immersed myself in the present as well. And what I've gotten out of it is really, really cool. Where I always felt like I was kind of a loner working in baseball, and also just being a fan. And I just kind of relied on my grandma to be the other woman I knew that loved it as much as I did. And through this experience, getting to experience a community and like, this whole really strong, amazing community of women where you don't have to reach too far. Like, I just reached out to a couple of women I knew, and they're like, yeah, I'll get you an interview with this person. Oh, they'd love to talk to you, this person. And these are people who like, now I feel like, oh my God, they're like famous in baseball. They're so inaccessible, but they're not, because it's this core, it's this support system. And I have admittedly also never had that kind of a support system with women. Growing up, I was an only child, and I grew up in we were not religious, but I grew up in a very religious area. And all that girls really talked about growing up was like, when I get married and have 6 kids, and I didn't identify with that. So I just hung out with boys, and then all my heroes in my family and people I were closest to were men. And I never understood how completely important and awesome it is to have a community of women who are also into the same things I'm into, and baseball specifically. So that was like it's kind of crazy to have arrived at that by reaching back 70 years to get here. But yeah.
No, I mean, thank you for saying all that. That, when you're talking about that interview where she's trying to tell men that it's not softball, I mean, that it's, they're trying to correct her about softball and baseball. That just tells the whole story in itself. I mean, with everything happening right now, just on just race and gender in general, it's a pretty difficult time being in that community, either being a woman or being a person of color in baseball. It's just it's you feel like even though we've contributed so much to the sport as a culture, that we're still not like part of a completely part of it. We're just like some kind of, like you said, relic to celebrate all the time.
Excuse me.
Bless you. But we're seeing like this trophy to hold up of when need to be said, oh, equality, or instead of truly embracing a person's culture or a person's gender all the time, every single minute of the day. It seems like it's only happening during February, or when something comes out about domestic abuse, domestic violence, or some kind of like like the stories about the women reporters in baseball right now that are being given. It's just a horrible story happening, and it seems like, oh, now we're going to talk about equality, and not before that.
Right. Yeah. And it's particularly difficult to be, I mean, for as much as I love baseball, I'll say like in the last year, I've really struggled myself. And that's because of what you're saying. And I think, and I'm a white woman working in the sport, which, we always see these sort of like, people are celebrating the advancement of a woman here, a woman there in baseball. And it's not the advancement of women in baseball if it's only white women. It's just the advancement of white women in baseball. And, so it's like, it's like, yes, I want to celebrate that. But I also, it's like, we're past the point of, yay, women got the vote. Okay, well, just white women, but you hold on another 6 years, we'll get there. But we're in a different time now, and it just, I mean, it should never be the case, but right now, certainly it shouldn't be the case. But it is very difficult to see something like, MLB posting a, Women's History Month, celebrating all the influential women in baseball. And they've got all these pictures and they've got all these stories. And yet at the same time, you've got like very, very bad men getting a pass for being, it's like, if you really want to respect and honor women in baseball, respect and honor the women in baseball right now. And I think that's absolutely, I mean, that's the case for anyone from any background, any marginalized group, color, gender, whatever you are. When you look at something you love and you don't see yourself there, not just in representation, but just in any aspect of it, and you don't feel like it loves you back, what's going to motivate you to want to do better in it? So that's a definite struggle.
With what just recently happened with the president of the Seattle Mariners and Kevin Mathers, and not only his conversation that was obvious evidence of racism, but before that he had some domestic or sexual abuse allegations towards women. How do you, and especially for the Mariners are very like they have a representation of a lot of Japanese, Koreans, Black, Latino baseball players. A lot of them go there. How do you keep your joy of baseball without feeling too tarnished by the sport? And I think that's with any other sport in general too. Like, how do you keep being a fan of it with all these things going around?
Well, for myself, I just have to constantly remind myself that baseball is so much bigger than and is not limited to Major League Baseball. And unfortunately, as with so many things, money comes first. So while, I think a lot of people can agree that while it's wonderful that, post George Floyd, these major corporations are coming out with, these Instagram posts or saying these things, it's awesome. And it's great that they do that they voice their support, but support is so much more than that. And, you really have to hit people in the dollar. You have to hit them where it counts. So, unfortunately, like right now, it doesn't really matter whether or not we show up to games, but, I struggled for a while with, like, say, Giants games. We've had a couple of things as well. And, it's like, what's annoying is, like, I know my dollar doesn't matter really. It's like a drop in the bucket, but I think that we should absolutely feel like we can voice our internal and external struggles with that. And then also kind of look elsewhere, like baseball is so much more, and it's not defined by this bar. I don't know where, I think it is the money, but I don't know where or why Major League Baseball, I don't know why they get to define what is defined as success. For someone who wants to play baseball, they want to make it to the show, they want to make it to the big, and that's awesome. And they should, but we should have more venues and more opportunity for people to participate in what is supposed to be the national pastime. If this venue is not allowing for all people of the nation to participate in the national pastime, then we should have other ways to participate if they're not going to open the doors.
Yeah, I mean, that in itself is a great idea, because I found myself like watching more games of Lidom, the Dominican League, the PR League, Liga PR, KBO, all these other leagues, because it brought about, especially the Latin leagues, it brought to me something more closely to what I'm in touch with: the excitement, the culture, just the joy of baseball. It was just pure joy that they were having while they were playing. And even the softball games that I watched, it seems like those women had so much joy. It was just pure baseball. It wasn't about all these other things going on. It was just simply just them just playing. And again, yeah, if you want to get into baseball, MLB is not just that's not just baseball. There's other leagues around there. And I think it's a great thing. I even started listening to the Hawaiian Baseball League, which I didn't know existed. And I started listening to the radio. And that brings me to my next point. Baseball and other leagues are not accessible to us. Like, we don't see them on TV, on ESPN or anywhere. And it's such a shame, because those can really broaden a person's, especially a young white man that's just getting into the sport as a fan. If they were watching Dominican baseball, softball, and all this, I think they'll, especially when they're young, it'll give them better education on culture and gender. And I think that's a huge misstep that the Major League Baseball is not doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, making it accessible, and like you said, seeing, like inclusion or representation by, like, bringing one woman or one Black person into the offices. That is a gesture. But when you bring people into decision-making places, that's really where it needs to happen. And that's not just for the people who need heroes or need representation. That's for everyone. Like, that changes the perspective everywhere. Like, to have a woman coaching you or taking batting practice, like Justine Siegel, who started an awesome nonprofit called Baseball for All, which I would encourage everyone to check out, was the first woman to throw batting practice for a Major League Baseball team. And she has some accounts of those experiences. I haven't heard them all, and I'm sure she's just got plenty. But to get through to the point, where men who've been working their way up to major leagues will take you seriously when you give them advice on how to swing, it's like there's an automatic barrier there with coaches and with executives. And, there's an automatic assumption that I know more than you, even though you're in a coaching position and I can learn from you, or, And unfortunately, that's the way it is with fans as well. And I'm sure any woman who is a fan of baseball, or any girl, if you've been wearing like a team jersey or something, like if you're out in public and somehow, some way, it's apparent that you're a fan of baseball, I guarantee a shared experience we've all had is being pop quizzed by a guy. And like, that's just not fun. And also, like, who cares? But like, I've had that experience from guys who were like, probably knew a third of what I know, but just felt the need to like somehow put me in my place. And it's such a strange thing, because it's not like, when someone's getting into music, like say you hear something on the radio, you're like, oh, I like the sound of that. And you want to find out who the artist is. And you kind of, and then you kind of get into the genre, and you kind of find yourself liking this kind of music. And, no one's ever going to, if you're wearing like a band t-shirt, or I don't know, or they hear you listening in your car, no one's going to roll down the window and go, name the entire discography of the band you're listening to. When did they win this award? What performance did they, what concert did they play in 1997 at this place? And how many fans attended? And, it's like, that's absurd. No one ever does that. So why does that happen with this? It's just a matter of having it. If people see people like Kim Ng as general managers of Major League Baseball teams, and they see them in places where they're making decisions, and they see them coaching, it just becomes like a normal thing. And that trickles down to fans. And then that trickles down to like little girls who want to play baseball. And, so it's unfortunate, because Major League Baseball is not doing a very great job of making that happen. And that's why I always encourage people to look elsewhere. But at the same time, it's like, everyone's going to look to Major League Baseball to lead the charge for baseball. So those things just need to be happening.
Yeah. It's a shame that, it's like, if you're a young boy, your parents should be teaching you about respect and equality at the beginning of when you're young. And as a young fan of baseball, Major League should be teaching that as well. It's especially for young boys playing baseball, I think, teaching them about all that avoids these kind of things. It's overwhelming how much one, and I'm assuming there's way more events that happen, but one event just kind of triggers a person to really like talk about these things, because that's the only time we talk about it, because Major League doesn't touch it. They don't want to touch it. They allow everyone else to talk about it, but they don't want to be the person to spearhead that conversation. And it's a shame, just with your book here, it's a shame that you're the only one that's made this like story come out, even though it's a beautiful one. I would love to see, I wish there was more out there about this, and then Negro Leagues as well. I think both those stories are two sad but inspirational stories that could lead itself to young leaders now. But yeah, I think that's all the questions I had for you today. And, I do appreciate your time, and want to know, what are you working on next?
Oh man, so many things right now. Okay, to be perfectly honest, right now I'm just revamping my website because it's a mess.
Really?
I feel like I can't
beautiful.
start anything else. Oh, well, thank you. It's kind of become like a dumping, it's like a junk drawer for all my work. I'm like, I'll just shove it in there, and I don't really.
This is the most beautiful junk drawer I've ever seen in my life, by the way.
That's very kind. Thank you. Maybe I'm just self-critical. But yeah, no, I've got a couple of other book projects kind of in the works. Also I can't really talk about it, but a potential public art collaboration that also involves telling the story of an amazing woman in baseball that I hope will come to fruition, and we'll see. But if anyone's looking for other stories about women in baseball, particularly Negro Leagues stories, which I think are, even, I don't know, larger displays of perseverance and and fortitude, I guess, to put it very, very benignly. There's a new book out about Effa Manley, who was an owner and manager of the Newark Eagles Negro Leagues team. And what's great about it is that it doesn't just talk about Effa Manley. It's like it's a great introduction to the Negro Leagues and talks about kind of the rise and fall through kind of the lens of this person. And the author is Andrea Williams. And I'm particularly excited about that one because there are 2 or 3 other books about Effa Manley that have already been written, but they're written by older white men. And, there's a lot that we're missing from these stories if they're not told by the right people. So I'm really excited about this one. And there's also a biography about Tony Stone out there, and some cool information coming out. So I think we'll be hearing a lot more stories from the right people coming up soon.
Awesome. Are you ever going to go to Yankee Stadium and throw the first pitch?
Oh man. I sure
We got to see that happen. We got to see it happen.
I know. That was, when the pandemic hit, it was like, there will be other book tours. There'll be other things. But that was one that really stung. It's like, oh damn. Man.
When I saw that, I was like, oh, that would be so amazing for her.
I know. I'm still playing catch in the yard and practicing just in case they let me come back and do it maybe next year. So keeping my fingers crossed.
Me too. Well, I appreciate your time and contributing to this episode of Kind of New to Baseball. Annie, thank you so much. Anika.
Thank you. Anika. That's okay. I've been called. I respond to anything that resembles my name because it's always been, it's a weird one.
Anika, thank you so much and have a great Saturday.
Thank you, Eddie. You too.